Most of you aren't praying to me. You're praying to an idea of me, a projection, a religious construct, a cosmic butler you've invented to serve your fear. You call my name, but you're speaking to a stranger. You ask for miracles, but you don't want transformation. You want comfort, control, certainty, and then you wonder why your prayers bounce back empty. Here's the truth. The version of me you're praying to doesn't exist. I am not your servant. I am not here to fulfill your list. I came to break you open, resurrect you from the inside, and make you whole in ways you don't even have the capacity to ask for yet. If your prayers aren't working, it's not because I'm ignoring you. It's because you're still talking to the wrong God. Let me introduce myself. You clicked on this video because something inside you is breaking. You've prayed faithfully, desperately, sincerely, and you're still waiting, still hurting, still wondering if I even hear you. Maybe you've been praying for years for a breakthrough that never comes. Maybe you've started to feel guilty for wanting to stop praying altogether. Maybe you're exhausted from holding up the facade that your faith is strong enough when inside you feel abandoned, unworthy, or invisible to me. I know. I see it. I see you lying awake at night, whispering prayers into the dark, waiting for something to shift. I see you walking into church with a smile plastered on your face while your heart is screaming. I see the shame you carry when people ask you to share your testimony, and you don't have one because it feels like I never show up for you the way I show up for everyone else. Here's the lie you've been told: that prayer is a transaction, that if you pray hard enough, long enough, perfectly enough, I will finally deliver what you want. That unanswered prayer means unanswered love. That silence equals rejection. You've been taught that prayer is a formula: say the right words, believe hard enough, have enough faith, quote the right scripture, and boom, the heavens will open and you'll get your miracle. And when it doesn't happen, you blame yourself. You think, I must not have enough faith. I must be doing it wrong. I must be too sinful, too broken, too unworthy for God to bother with me. And so you pray harder, you fast longer, you serve more, you try to earn my attention, like I'm some distant king who only responds to those who grovel convincingly enough. But here's the truth I'm going to reveal to you today. Prayer was never designed to get me to do what you want. It was designed to transform you into who you were always meant to be. The reason your prayers feel powerless isn't because you're praying wrong. It's because you're praying for the wrong things, with the wrong expectations, to a misunderstood version of me. You think I'm a problem solver. I'm a soul resurrector. You think I'm here to make your life easier. I'm here to make your life truer. You think I'm supposed to remove every obstacle. I'm here to give you the strength to walk through fire without being consumed. In the next hour, I'm going to dismantle everything you thought you knew about prayer. I'm going to show you why unanswered prayers are often my loudest answers. Why waiting is not punishment, but preparation. Why the silence you fear is actually intimacy you've been avoiding. And I'm going to teach you how to pray the kind of prayers that don't just ask for change, they become the change itself. This isn't going to comfort your ego. It's going to awaken your spirit. You're not broken. You've just been praying with your hands instead of your heart. Let's fix that. Before I teach you why prayer works differently than you think, let me tell you 3 stories. Not parables you've heard in Sunday school. Stories that will show you what prayer actually looks like when it's alive. The first story is about a father who came to me in Capernaum. His name was Jairus. He was a ruler of the synagogue, respected, religious, a man who knew scripture inside and out. But none of that mattered when his 12-year-old daughter was dying. He didn't come to me with theology. He came with desperation. He fell at my feet in front of everyone, this dignified religious leader, on his knees, in the dirt, and he begged. His exact words were simple. My daughter is at the point of death. Come and lay your hands on her so that she may be made well and live. There was no eloquent prayer, No proper religious language, just a father's raw, unfiltered plea, and I went with him, immediately. No hesitation, but here's where the story gets complicated. On the way to his house, the crowd was pressing in on me from every side. People were shoving, demanding, calling my name, and in the middle of that chaos, a woman who had been bleeding for 12 years, ostracized, untouchable, bankrupt from medical bills, reached out and touched the edge of my garment. She didn't ask permission. She didn't announce herself. She just reached through the crowd in one last desperate act of faith, and power went out from me. I felt it. I stopped walking and asked, "Who touched me?" My disciples thought I was being ridiculous. Peter said, "Master, the multitudes are pressing around you, and you ask, 'Who touched me?'" But I knew the difference between being touched by a crowd and being touched by faith. While I was dealing with this woman, time was ticking for Jairus. His daughter was dying. Every second mattered, and I stopped. I took time to talk to this bleeding woman, to acknowledge her faith, to call her daughter, to heal her publicly. Can you imagine what was going through Jairus' mind? He had to be screaming inside. My daughter is dying and he's stopping to talk to someone else. What if we're too late? What if this delay costs me everything? And then, while I was still speaking to the woman, messengers came from Jairus' house with the worst news a father can hear. "Your daughter is dead. Don't trouble the teacher anymore. It's over." There's no point. Jairus' prayer had failed. Or so it seemed. He had asked me to come and heal his daughter, and we were too late. She was gone. The one thing he prayed for, her life, was over. But I turned to him and said 5 words that would change everything. Do not fear, only believe. Not "I'll fix this." Not "Don't worry, I have a plan." Just believe. Believe even though she's dead. Believe even though the messengers said it's over. Believe even though everything you prayed for seems to have failed. When we arrived at his house, the mourners were already there, wailing and making a commotion. I said to them, "Why are you making this noise? The child is not dead but sleeping." And they laughed at me. They laughed because they knew death when they saw it. This wasn't sleep. This was the end. But I went into the room where she was lying, took her by the hand, and said, "Talitha cum," "Little girl, arise." And immediately she got up and began walking around. The dead came back to life. But here's what I want you to understand. Jairus' prayer was answered, but not in the time frame he demanded, not in the method he expected. He had to watch his prayer fail before he could witness resurrection. He had to experience the worst possible outcome, his daughter dying, before he could see the miracle that was bigger than healing. Healing would have been temporary. She would have eventually died of something else. But resurrection is a demonstration of power over death itself. Jairus prayed for healing. I gave him resurrection. But he almost missed it because he thought my delay meant my denial. Most of you stop praying the moment you think I'm late. You give up when the answer doesn't come on your schedule. You interpret delay as rejection. But I'm never late. I'm always positioned for resurrection. The prayer you think is failing is actually being answered at a level you don't yet have the capacity to comprehend. Jairus wanted his daughter healed. I wanted him to see that nothing, not even death, is beyond my reach. His unanswered prayer became the doorway to a miracle that would echo through generations. But it required him to keep believing even when everything looked lost. Do not fear, only believe. That's not positive thinking. That's resurrection faith. It's the kind of faith that says, even if I don't see it yet, even if it looks impossible, even if everyone tells me it's over, I'm going to trust that you are who you say you are. Now let me tell you a second story. This one's a metaphor, but it's just as real. Imagine a gardener who plants a seed in the ground and prays over it every single day. He stands in his garden and says, "Grow quickly, become a tree by tomorrow. I need shade. I need fruit. I need results. Why aren't you answering? Weeks pass. He checks the soil every morning. Nothing. He digs around the seed. Still, nothing. He starts to panic. This isn't working. God isn't listening. Maybe I planted it wrong. Maybe the soil is bad. Maybe I'm cursed. Maybe God just doesn't care about me. So he stops watering it. He stops tending to it. He walks away bitter and disillusioned, convinced that his prayers are meaningless. But here's what he doesn't see. Beneath the surface, the seed is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. It's not ignoring his prayers. It's responding to them. But the work is underground. The seed has cracked open. Roots are spreading deep, strong, intricate networks that are invisible to the naked eye. The gardener wanted instant results. He wanted a tree by tomorrow. But the seed needed time to build a foundation that could hold a tree. If a tree shot up overnight without roots, the first storm would rip it out of the ground. The gardener's impatience would have killed the very thing he was praying for. The delay wasn't denial. It was development. The silence wasn't absence. It was the sound of roots growing where no one could see. Months later, a shoot breaks through the soil, then branches, then leaves, then blossoms, and eventually, fruit. The tree is strong, stable, able to withstand storms because of the root system that was built during the season of silence. But the gardener never sees it. He abandoned the garden during the rooting season. He walked away during the most important phase of growth because he couldn't see progress on the surface. And now someone else sits in the shade of the tree he prayed for but never stayed around to receive. This is what most of you do with prayer. You pray for something. You expect it immediately. And when you don't see instant results, you assume I'm not listening. You assume your prayer is bouncing off the ceiling. You assume you're doing it wrong, or that you're not worthy enough, or that I've forgotten about you. But I haven't. I'm doing underground work. I'm building roots in you. I'm forming something strong enough to carry the weight of what you're asking for. You think I'm ignoring you when you don't see immediate growth. But I'm building a foundation. I'm developing your character. I'm teaching you patience, endurance, trust, humility, things you can't learn in a microwave moment. The gift you're praying for requires a stronger version of you than currently exists. If I gave you what you wanted when you first asked for it, it would crush you under its weight. You're not ready, not because you're unworthy, but because the blessing you're asking for needs roots. And roots take time. They grow in the dark. They grow in silence. They grow underground where no one applauds and no one sees. But when the tree finally emerges, it's unshakable. Your unanswered prayer is not stagnation. It's root formation. And if you abandon the process because you can't see the progress, you'll miss the tree I was always growing. Let me tell you one more story. There was a widow who kept coming to an unjust judge, demanding justice. She had been wronged. Someone had taken something from her, and she had no power, no status, no money to hire lawyers. So she came to the judge and said, "Give me justice against my adversary." The judge ignored her. He didn't care about her case. He didn't care about justice. He only cared about himself. But she came back, again, and again, and again, day after day, week after week. She showed up at his door demanding to be heard. Most people hear this story and think, so I just need to keep nagging God until he gives in? No, that's not the point. I'm not the unjust judge. I don't need to be convinced to love you. I don't need to be worn down until I finally grant your request out of annoyance. The point of the story is this. The judge finally gave her justice, not because she wore him down, but because her persistence revealed something about her character. She refused to quit. She refused to accept defeat. She refused to let injustice have the final word. Her persistence wasn't about changing the judge's mind. It was about revealing the strength of her own conviction. She believed justice was real, that her cause was true, and that she deserved an answer. And that belief kept her showing up even when every rational voice told her to give up. Now, If an unjust judge who doesn't care about anyone eventually responds to persistence, how much more will I, who love you infinitely, who know every detail of your situation, who am already working on your behalf, respond to faith that doesn't quit? Persistent prayer isn't about changing my mind. It's about forming your character. It's about teaching you that you are not powerless, that your voice matters, that you don't have to accept defeat just because the enemy says so. When you keep praying after the silence, you're not annoying me. You're becoming who I always knew you could be, someone who believes even when belief makes no sense, someone who keeps knocking even when the door seems locked, someone who refuses to walk away just because the answer hasn't come yet. That kind of faith is rare. That kind of faith moves heaven, not because it earns my favor, but because it aligns with the truth of who I am and who you are. You are not a victim. You are not forgotten. You are not powerless. And when you keep praying, you remind yourself of that truth until it becomes unshakable. These stories aren't just history, they're a mirror. So now let me show you the principles behind why your prayers feel unanswered, and what I'm actually doing in the silence. Most of your prayers are requests. Give me, heal me, fix me, change them, open this door, close that one, provide this, remove that. And there's nothing wrong with asking. I told you to ask. Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be opened. But here's what you don't understand. I didn't come to give you a better life. I came to give you a new life. You're praying for circumstances to shift. I'm praying for you to shift. You want the job. I want you to become the kind of person who doesn't need the job to feel secure, valuable, or worthy. You want the relationship. I want you to become whole enough that you don't need another person to complete you. You want the money. I want you to learn that your worth isn't tied to your bank account. You're asking for outcomes. I'm offering identity. Do you see the difference? You think the answer to your prayer is a change in circumstances. I know the answer is a change in you, and that takes longer. It's messier. It requires you to confront things you'd rather avoid. It means facing your fear, your insecurity, your need for control, your addiction to certainty. It means letting go of the version of yourself that believes happiness is found in getting what you want. But here's the paradox. The moment you stop needing the thing you're praying for, you become ready to receive it. Not because I'm playing games, but because your desperation was poisoning the very gift you were begging for. When you pray from desperation, you're not praying in faith, you're praying in fear. You're trying to control me, manipulate me, convince me to do what you think is best. And that kind of prayer doesn't work because it's built on the foundation of I know better than God. But when you pray from surrender, when you say, not my will but yours, when you release your grip on the outcome, and trust that I see what you cannot see, that's when your prayers become powerful. Not because you earned my favor, but because you removed the interference. You stopped trying to be God and started letting me be God. And that opens up space for miracles. I told you to seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness. And all these things will be added to you. Not seek the things and maybe you'll stumble into the kingdom. First things first. Seek me. Seek alignment with truth. Seek transformation. And watch how the things you were desperately grasping for start showing up naturally, effortlessly, in ways you never could have orchestrated yourself. Now let me show you something else. You prayed for one door to open. I closed it. You prayed for healing. The illness remained. You prayed for reconciliation. The relationship ended, and you called it unanswered. But what if I answered with a no because I was already preparing a yes you couldn't yet imagine? What if the closed door saved you from walking into a disaster? What if the illness is teaching you something about dependence and humility that you never could have learned in health? What if the ended relationship is making space for the one that will actually honor you? Paul prayed 3 times for the thorn in his flesh to be removed. 3 times I said no, not because I didn't care, but because my strength is made perfect in weakness. The thing he thought was disqualifying him was actually positioning him for greater authority. He thought the thorn was the problem. I knew the thorn was the platform. It kept him humble. It kept him dependent on me. It made his ministry about my power, not his charisma. Without that thorn, he might have become arrogant, self-sufficient, dangerous. The very thing he prayed against became the very thing I used to fulfill the deeper prayer. He didn't even know he was praying the prayer to be used for my glory, to impact generations, to write half the New Testament. Sometimes the thing you're praying against is the very thing I'm using to fulfill your destiny. You think it's an obstacle. I know it's an opportunity. You think it's holding you back. I know it's positioning you forward. Unanswered prayer is often redirected prayer. I'm not ignoring your request. I'm answering a deeper one. And here's another truth you need to understand. Prayer is not a tool to manipulate reality. It's a process to align with truth. You come to me with a list. I come to you with transformation. You want me to change your circumstances. I want to change you so radically that circumstances lose their power over you. Think about it. If I answered every prayer the way you wanted, you'd be the most comfortable, entitled, shallow version of yourself. You'd never grow. You'd never develop resilience, character, depth. You'd be addicted to ease, terrified of discomfort, incapable of handling adversity. I love you too much to leave you there. So I allow the unanswered prayers. I allow the delays. I allow the struggles. Not because I'm cruel, but because I'm forming you into someone who can handle the weight of glory. When you pray, you think the goal is to get what you want, but the goal is to become someone who wants what I want. That's not submission in the religious sense. That's freedom, because what I want for you is always better than what you want for yourself. Always. You just can't see it yet because you're standing too close to the canvas. You see one brush stroke. I see the entire painting. You see one chapter. I see the whole story. And from my perspective, every unanswered prayer is moving you toward the masterpiece you were always meant to be. The more you surrender your agenda, the more powerful your prayers become. Not because I reward obedience like a transactional parent, but because surrender removes the interference between your will and mind. When your will aligns with mind, there's no conflict. There's only flow. And in that flow, miracles happen naturally. Let me talk to you about silence for a moment. You fear silence because you interpret it as rejection. When I don't speak, when I don't answer, when heaven seems closed, you panic. You think I've abandoned you. You think you did something wrong. You think you're being punished. But silence is not absence. Silence is the space where I stop talking so you can finally hear. When I speak constantly, you become dependent on words. You become addicted to signs, to feelings, to constant reassurance. But when I'm silent, you're forced to trust presence instead of proof. You're forced to stand on what you already know instead of always demanding new revelation. And that builds a different kind of faith, a mature faith, a tested faith, a faith that can withstand the storms. The disciples wanted constant signs, constant miracles, constant assurance. But I told them, blessed are those who have not seen and yet believe. The mature relationship doesn't need constant validation. It rests in knowing. Think about human relationships. In the beginning, you need constant communication. You need to hear, I love you every day. You need reassurance. You need proof. But as the relationship matures, you don't need those things as much because you know. The silence doesn't scare you anymore because you're secure in the love. That's what I'm building with you. A relationship so strong that you don't fall apart when you don't hear my voice for a season. You don't assume I've left just because I'm quiet. You trust that I'm still here, still working, still present, even in the silence. The silence you think means I'm ignoring you is actually me trusting you enough to stand on your own 2 feet. I'm not your crutch. I'm not here to do everything for you while you sit back and consume. I'm here to raise you up, to make you strong, to give you the authority and capacity to walk as a son or daughter of God. And that requires me to step back sometimes and let you exercise the muscles you've been building. Be still and know that I am God. Not be anxious, not be desperate, not fill the silence with noise. Be still. Rest. Trust. No, that's not passivity. That's the highest form of activity. Active trust in the face of uncertainty. Now let me talk about waiting. You think delays are denials. You think if I don't answer immediately, the answer is no. But waiting is not punishment. Waiting is preparation. Joseph waited in prison for years before he became second in command of Egypt. David waited in the wilderness, running for his life, before he became king. Moses waited 40 years in the desert before he led the Exodus. Abraham waited decades for the son I promised him. And every single delay was necessary, not to test their patience, though that happened, but to form their character. If I had given Joseph the throne the moment I gave him the dream, he would have been arrogant, immature. The prison years taught him humility, wisdom, dependence on me. The waiting wasn't wasted time. If I gave you what you wanted when you first asked for it, it would crush you. Not because you're unworthy, stop thinking in terms of worthiness, but because the gift requires a stronger foundation than you currently have. The blessing you're praying for has weight. It has responsibility. It has consequences. And if you receive it before you're ready, it will destroy you. I've seen it happen 1,000 times. Someone prays for success, for influence, for wealth, and I give it to them before they're ready. And it ruins them. They become prideful, isolated, addicted, lost. The very thing they thought would save them becomes the thing that breaks them. I make you wait in the wilderness, in the prison, in the desert, not because I'm ignoring you, but because I'm preparing you. And here's the paradox. The longer the wait, the greater the calling. I don't delay your small prayers. Those get answered quickly because they don't require much transformation. But I delay your destiny-level prayers because they require destiny-level maturity. The bigger the promise, the longer the process. Abraham didn't wait 25 years for a child just to have a child. He waited 25 years to become the father of faith, the one through whom all nations would be blessed. The waiting transformed him from a man trying to force the promise through human effort into a man who trusted God to do the impossible. Those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength, not those who rush, not those who demand, not those who try to force outcomes, those who wait. Because waiting builds something in you that nothing else can build. Endurance, character, hope. Let me tell you something else. Most of your prayers are fear-based. You're not praying from faith. You're praying from panic. Please don't let this happen. Please fix this. Please change them. Please make this go away. And fear-based prayers don't work. Not because I punish fear, but because fear creates prayers that are self-protective rather than kingdom-advancing. When you pray in fear, you're trying to control outcomes to avoid suffering. You're not asking for alignment with truth. You're asking for comfort, for certainty, for control. And that kind of prayer keeps you small. It keeps you trapped in self-preservation mode. It makes you a slave to circumstances instead of a son or daughter walking in authority. But when you pray in love, when you pray from faith, when you say, I trust you even if this hurts. I trust you even if I don't understand. I trust you even if the answer is no, that's when your prayers become unstoppable. Because you're no longer praying to avoid pain. You're praying for truth. You're praying for alignment with what's real, what's eternal, what matters. And that kind of prayer moves mountains. Perfect love casts out fear. When you pray from love, love for me, love for truth, love for your own soul's growth, fear loses its grip. And suddenly the outcome doesn't matter as much as the process. Suddenly you're not desperate for the answer because you trust the one answering. The prayer that surrenders the outcome is the prayer that moves mountains. The prayer that clings to control moves nothing. Here's another thing you need to understand. You live in time. I live in eternity. You want your prayers answered by Friday. I'm answering them across generations. You see one chapter. I see the entire book. You measure success by how quickly I respond. I measure success by how thoroughly I transform. Your perspective is horizontal. You see what's happening in the moment, in the day. My perspective is vertical. I see what's happening across lifetimes, across generations, across eternity. And when you don't understand my timing, you assume I'm late. But I've never been late to anything. Never. I was late to Lazarus, or so it seemed. Mary and Martha sent word that their brother was sick, and I stayed where I was for 2 more days. By the time I arrived, Lazarus had been dead for 4 days, and they said to me, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." Do you hear the accusation in that statement? If you had been here, if you had cared enough to come when we called, if you hadn't delayed, our brother would still be alive. And I understood their pain. I wept with them. But I also knew something they didn't know. I wasn't late for healing. I was right on time for resurrection. Healing would have been impressive. Resurrection was impossible. Healing would have extended his life temporarily. Resurrection demonstrated power over death itself. I wasn't late. I was positioned for the greater miracle. But they couldn't see it yet because they were standing in the graveyard of their own expectations. What looks like delay in time is precision in eternity. 1,000 years in my sight are like a day that has just gone by. I don't operate on your timeline. I operate on truth's timeline, and truth doesn't rush. Now let me tell you something that might offend you. Easy prayers produce shallow faith. If every prayer were answered immediately, exactly the way you wanted, you'd never grow. You'd remain a spiritual infant, addicted to instant gratification, incapable of endurance, unable to handle real adversity. You'd be weak, entitled, fragile, and the moment something difficult happened, you'd crumble. The prayers that cost you time, comfort, certainty, control, are the prayers that forge you into someone capable of carrying the weight of answered prayer. Because here's what you don't realize. Answered prayer has weight. It comes with responsibility. It requires maturity to steward. If I gave you everything you asked for right now, you wouldn't be able to handle it. The unanswered prayer is preparing you to handle the answered one. Think about it this way. If you prayed for $1 million and I gave it to you tomorrow, what would happen? If you haven't learned discipline, wisdom, generosity, stewardship, you'd blow it. You'd ruin your life. The money wouldn't bless you. It would curse you. So I make you wait. I let you struggle financially for a season, not because I don't want to bless you, but because I'm teaching you how to handle blessing. I'm teaching you that your worth isn't tied to your bank account. I'm teaching you to trust me in lack so that when abundance comes, you don't worship it. The unanswered prayer is the training ground. And when you graduate from that training, the answer shows up naturally because you're finally ready to steward it well. James said, "Consider it pure joy when you face trials of many kinds, because the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Perseverance must finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything." The trial isn't the problem. The trial is the process. And if you skip the process, you'll never reach maturity. You'll stay stuck in spiritual adolescence, always demanding, never grateful, always complaining, never growing. I love you too much to leave you there. So I let the prayers go unanswered for a season, not forever, but long enough to build something in you that instant gratification could never produce. Character, endurance, trust, depth. These things can't be microwaved. They have to be forged through fire. And when you come out on the other side, you're not the same person who walked in. You're stronger, wiser, more capable of carrying what I've been preparing for you all along. Now you understand why your prayers feel unanswered. But understanding alone changes nothing. So let me show you how to pray differently, not with better words, but with a transformed heart. I'm not going to give you a prayer formula. Formulas create religion. I came to give you relationship. But I will give you 4 practices that shift prayer from transaction to transformation. First, for the next 7 days, I want you to pray the opposite of what you've been praying. Stop praying for what you want. Instead, pray for what I want. Every time you start to ask for something, pause and ask instead, what are you trying to teach me through this situation? What are you forming in me that I can't see yet? Don't pray. Remove this trial. Pray. Reveal what you're forming in me through this trial. Don't pray. Change them. Pray. Change me into someone who can love them as they are. Don't pray. Give me clarity. Pray. Give me trust in the absence of clarity. This isn't passivity. This is power. You're no longer begging me to rearrange reality to suit your fear. You're partnering with me to become someone reality can't break. You're no longer trying to escape the fire. You're asking me to use the fire to refine you into gold. This is how prayer stops being about getting and starts being about becoming. Write down one prayer request you've been repeating for months, maybe years. Now write the opposite prayer, the one that asks for transformation instead of transaction, and pray that instead. Watch what happens. Watch how your perspective shifts. Watch how peace starts to replace panic. Second, for 10 minutes a day, don't say anything. Don't ask for anything. Don't recite anything. Just sit. Close your eyes. Breathe. And listen. Most of you fill prayer with words because you're terrified of what you'll hear in the quiet. But I speak most clearly in silence. Not audibly. Not in King James English. But in peace. In conviction. In sudden clarity that rises from within. When you stop talking at me and start listening to me, everything changes. You start to hear the still, small voice that's been trying to reach you for years but couldn't get through the noise. Set a timer for 10 minutes. No music, no requests, no agenda, just presence. Sit in silence and see what surfaces. At first, it will be uncomfortable. Your mind will race. You'll want to check your phone, make a list, plan your day, resist, stay present, and after a few days, something will shift. You'll start to hear whispers of truth, nudges of direction, waves of peace that don't make logical sense, but feel more real than anything you've experienced. Write down anything you sense, feel, or realize during those 10 minutes. Don't judge it. Don't analyze it to death. Just notice it. Over time, you'll develop a sensitivity to my voice that you never had before, and you'll realize that I've been speaking all along. You just weren't quiet enough to hear. Silence isn't punishment. Silence is where intimacy lives. It's where the noise of the world fades, and the truth of who you are and who I am becomes undeniable. 10 minutes a day. That's all I'm asking. Not hours of fasting and praying in tongues, though there's a place for that. Just 10 minutes of sitting with me in the quiet. You'll be shocked at how much changes when you stop performing and start receiving. Third, physically open your hands when you pray. Not as a ritual, not as a religious gesture, but as a symbol. Closed fists represent control, demand, grasping. Open hands represent surrender, trust, release. Every time you start to clench, spiritually or physically, open your hands and say out loud, not mine, yours, not my will, yours, not my timing, yours. This simple act rewires your nervous system. It teaches your body what your mind resists. that you are not in control, and that's not a threat. It's freedom. When you clench, you're trying to hold on to something that was never yours to hold. When you open, you're acknowledging that everything is already in my hands, and in that acknowledgement, anxiety loses its grip. Try it right now. Wherever you are, clench your fists as tight as you can. Feel the tension. Feel the strain. Feel how exhausting it is to hold on. Now, slowly open your hands, palms up. Feel the release. Feel the relief. That's what surrender feels like. You've been clenching for so long that you've forgotten what it feels like to rest. Every time you pray this week, physically open your hands. Notice how it feels. Notice what you want to hold on to. Notice the fear that rises when you let go, and let it go anyway. Say out loud, I release this. I trust you with this. I surrender this outcome to you. And watch how peace floods in where panic used to live. Fourth, and this is the hardest one, thank me for the unanswered prayer. This will feel impossible at first. It might even feel insulting, but do it anyway. Thank me for the job that didn't come through. Thank me for the relationship that ended. Thank me for the healing that hasn't happened yet. Thank me for the financial struggle. Thank me for the door that closed. Thank me for the silence. Not because you're pretending everything is fine, not because you're in denial, but because you're choosing to trust that I see what you cannot see, and that my refusal is not rejection, it's protection, preparation, redirection toward something better. Gratitude in the midst of disappointment is the highest form of faith. It says, I don't understand, but I trust you. It says, this hurts, but I believe you're good. It says, I wanted something different, but I surrender to your wisdom. Write a thank you prayer for one unanswered prayer. Just one. Be honest. Don't fake it. Say something like, God, I don't understand why you haven't healed my mother yet. I don't understand why you let that relationship end. I don't understand why I'm still struggling financially after years of faithful giving. But I choose to thank you anyway. I choose to believe that you're working behind the scenes in ways I can't see. I choose to trust that you love me even when it doesn't feel like it. And I thank you for this unanswered prayer because I believe you're protecting me from something or preparing me for something I'm not ready for yet. Read it aloud. Notice what shifts inside you when you do. Notice the resistance. Notice the relief. Notice how gratitude, even forced gratitude, starts to soften the hard edges of resentment and disappointment. This practice doesn't make your prayers work faster. It makes you into someone who doesn't need them to. And that's when everything you've been praying for starts to arrive, not because you earned it, but because you finally became ready to receive it, without it destroying you. These 4 practices, praying the opposite, sitting in silence, opening your hands, and thanking me for unanswered prayers will transform your relationship with prayer. They'll shift you from transaction to transformation, from demanding to surrendering, from fear to faith. Try them for 1 week, just 7 days, and watch what happens. You came here desperate for answers. I gave you something better. I gave you a new way of seeing. Prayer is not a transaction, it's a transformation. It's not about getting me to do what you want. It's about becoming who you were created to be. Your unanswered prayers are not evidence of my absence. They're invitations into deeper trust, greater maturity, and resurrection-level faith. The silence you fear is actually intimacy. The waiting you resent is actually preparation. The no you keep receiving is often protecting you from a yes that would destroy you. You are not forgotten. You are not unworthy. You are not praying wrong. You're just praying to a version of me you invented instead of the one who's actually here wildly in love with you, sovereign over every delay, and committed to your transformation above your comfort. I'm not here to make your life easy. I'm here to make your life true. I'm not here to remove every struggle. I'm not here to answer every prayer the way you want. I'm here to answer the prayer you don't even know you're praying, the prayer for wholeness, for freedom, for resurrection. Every unanswered prayer is an answered invitation. An invitation to trust me more than you trust outcomes. An invitation to believe that I'm good, even when life isn't. An invitation to stop trying to control everything and start resting in the truth that I'm already in control. You are not powerless, you've just been praying with clenched fists. You are not alone, you've just been listening for the wrong voice. I am here. I have always been here. And every unanswered prayer has been preparing you for the moment when you finally understand that the greatest answer I could ever give you isn't a changed circumstance, it's a changed heart. It's a new way of seeing. It's the revelation that you were never abandoned, never forgotten, never unloved. You were always held, always seen, always cherished. And now that you know that, everything changes. Now you can pray without desperation. Now you can wait without anxiety. Now you can trust without needing proof. Now you can rest in the silence, because you know I'm still there, still working, still loving you through the process. If this resonated with you, if something inside you shifted while listening to these words, I want to hear about it. Drop a comment below and tell me, what's one prayer you've been praying that you're now seeing differently? What's one thing I said today that hit you in a place you didn't expect? And if this helped you, share it with someone who's waiting for an answer that hasn't come yet. They need to hear this too. They need to know that unanswered prayers aren't rejection. They're redirection. They're preparation. They're invitations into deeper trust and greater transformation. I'll see you in the next one. Until then, remember this. You are loved beyond measure, held beyond understanding, and being prepared for something greater than you can currently comprehend. Peace.